Hola y bienvenido al podcast de Torres Hospitality, donde entrevistamos a los mejores perfiles del sector turístico global, tanto en español como en inglés, para conocer de primera mano las tendencias, noticias, opiniones y debates sobre la actualidad, el presente y el futuro de la industria alojativa y turística. Soy Pablo Torres. Puedes seguirme en mi web www.torresconsulting.co.uk, plataformas de podcast, YouTube y redes sociales. ¡Arrancamos!
Hello and welcome to a new episode of this series of interviews with hospitality leaders. Today with me, Susan Barry, who's got more than 20 years of experience in commercial roles in the hospitality industry. She's great knowledge on commercial strategy, sales, marketing, and also has her own very interesting podcast, Top Floor Podcast. Hello, Susan. How are you?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. No, my pleasure. Thanks a lot for being here on the show. And as always, I like to start with the same first question with the one I do for every guest of the show, which is asking about your experience. So more than 20 years in the industry, great background in sales, marketing, consulting, and now President Queen Bee of Hive Marketing. So how could you recap in a couple of minutes that career, that evolution from the beginning?
Well, I will tell you the shortest possible version of my life story. So hold on to your hat and stay awake. I was a hotel director of sales and marketing for Starwood for 10 years, long before the merger with Marriott, in Denver, Colorado, the Washington, D.C. area, and here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I still live. Most of what I did was open new build hotels. And for Starwood, the director of sales and marketing was the first employee. So I was usually first on the ground and there the longest. Opening hotels is really, really exciting and crazy and adrenaline rush. And then when you get the hotel open, you're like, oh, okay, this is boring. So after opening 2 properties in 3 years, I decided to start my company in the spring of 2009. There was a global financial crisis, seemed like a perfect time to go out on my own. But 13 years later, we are still alive. I still have a house, still in business. So fortunately, I'm going to knock on wood, it worked out really well.
It did. And you're President Queen Bee, which is probably the most unusual role that I've ever seen. So what does it mean exactly, being the Queen Bee at Hive Marketing?
Well, I founded Hive Marketing, as I said, 13 years ago. And initially, our goal was to help individual hotels with social media. So that was kind of back in the wild, wild west days of Facebook and Twitter. And I had done a social campaign, as it were, for the last hotel I opened that was then replicated across the brand and across several hotels internationally. And so, of course, I thought I was a social media genius. In order to stay in business as long as we've had to really listen to what our customers want, kind of follow the industry where it goes. And so at this point, we have evolved from working with mostly individual hotels to working mostly business to business with hotel owners, management companies, and other businesses and hospitality vendors, et cetera. So we help those B2B hospitality companies kind of sell and market to each other and manage their commercial relationships. So for example, private equity firms often hire me and our company to make sure that they're getting their money's worth out of their brands and their management companies. So, if I were to try to describe it to my Aunt Betty Sue or your grandmother or something, I would say is what we're selling is this extremely deep and broad knowledge of the hotel business that's really balanced between understanding operations, but also understanding the real estate and investment and development side and the big picture of the brand.
Okay, nice elevator pitch for the granny. And besides the role in there, you also have your own very popular podcast, the Top Floor Podcast. So what's the origin of the podcast, and what sort of profile do you usually interview on the show?
Gosh, can you imagine trying to explain to our grandmothers what a podcast is at this point? Like, listen, it's like a radio show, okay?
Exactly.
So we started developing Top Floor about a year ago with the idea that the show was going to be about hospitality marketing. But just like my company evolved from this singular focus on Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, the show has too. So I follow my curiosity, I think a lot like you do. And I love to talk to people. I mean, I just love doing it. I would do it for free every day for the rest of my life if I could. But I love to talk to people that I think represent or demonstrate some aspect of what the future of hospitality looks like. So, for example, I talked to Lenny Moon, who, spent his career as a consultant and a finance guy, essentially, and a CFO, and is now the CEO of this company called Flycoin, which is the first cryptocurrency travel rewards program. And I'm just saying that to say that's an example of, we're not just talking about, the big 5 hotel brands and how to A/B test an email subject line. I'm really interested in what's every possible thing that could come in the industry. Most recently, I did an episode with this man, Joe Stren of Old Good Things. This is an architectural salvage company, and they source these really unique items that boutique hotels and restaurants use, like a lot of chandeliers, lighting, that kind of thing. And so, that sounds weird, right? Joe and his stores are full of old stuff, but the concept of reusing this architectural salvage is very much in keeping with the future in which hotels, the travel business, airlines are going to have to pay attention to sustainability.
Okay, good examples here on how the professionals looking forward, again, like one step ahead of what's going on at the moment.
And plus, I make people predict the future so that I can then take the recording and play it back for them, and we can see if they were right or wrong. So stay tuned for that.
All right. I'll keep the recording then.
Yeah.
Safe. So going back to focusing on Hive Marketing, you were saying you went from social media campaigns for hotels to more of the B2B role. What are the most common challenges that these companies have? What do they come to you for?
Well, so I don't always work with individual hotels, but I still have a lot of opinions about individual hotels. And I have this thing that I can't stop thinking about. I posted about it on LinkedIn recently, and it's just like in my mind. So I want to describe it to you and maybe even get your opinion about it too. So at this point in history, 2022, if you want to buy something, there are more sources of information, more ways to research. You can get reviews and, look up articles, whatever, you know what I'm saying. There's plenty of things to look at. They're all free. You can do it all yourself. At the same time, we are less physically connected than ever before. The pandemic, working from home, blah, blah, blah. But yet word of mouth is as powerful as ever, maybe even more so. So we know we can Google something, but we still ask our friends, our family, our colleagues for suggestions. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but people will be like, can't you Google that? Yes, dummy, I can Google it. I want to know what you think, right? So I think what that indicates is that we need help. And I promise I'm getting to a point here. We need help sifting through all of this information because there's just so much of it. There's so much volume. And it's also sometimes hard to trust where that information's coming from. Is this a paid ad? Is it organic content? It's not always easy to tell. And so I also think that there's probably this desire to connect. So sure, I could Google XYZ thing, but if I ask my sister, it gives me an excuse to call and connect with her. Okay. So when you come down to booking a hotel stay, you can't rely on word of mouth. There are too many hotels, too many brands, and too many cities. Like nobody knows enough about every hotel that there is. So you're hardly going to ever know enough really frequent travelers to get a good data set. You might know someone who lives in the town, but they probably don't stay in hotels. Or you might know somebody who's been to this one resort this one time, but it's hard to get critical mass. So you know, you could maybe like hear, oh, Hiltons are really nice, but it's imprecise because you can't know that every Hilton in every city in every country in the whole world is really nice, right? So as a result, individual hotels have to rely on like word of mouth by proxy. So I can't call you and say, what's your favorite hotel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin? Maybe I can. I don't know if you've been there or not. I have to find some sort of proxy for this word of mouth. So examples I think of that would be like TripAdvisor reviews, maybe the number of followers they have on like Instagram or something, maybe actual word of mouth asking for suggestions, like going on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm going to so-and-so place. Does anybody have a good hotel they recommend? But there's a pretty slim selection of this word of mouth, this way to narrow down the bazillion trillion options and opinions and all that stuff. So it just doesn't surprise me that travelers book on stuff that's kind of dumb, like this location versus star rating versus price algorithm that they've developed in their own minds because they don't have anyone to ask. And the reason they don't have anyone to ask is because hotels can't do things like social media content at scale. It is impossible for an individual hotel to create enough high quality content to go viral or really move the needle. Plus, I know this isn't true internationally, but here in the United States, 70% of hotels are controlled by brands. Brands have a lot of rules about what you're allowed to say, right? So I just can't figure out how we connect individual hotels with some form of content creation or word of mouth by proxy that can scale big enough to give them an advantage. I'm sure you have a brilliant idea. And then once you tell me, let's hang up, run to a lawyer and patent this idea and sell it to everyone. How do you think?
Brilliant. Sounds good. I was thinking is that because I want to ask you about that. You know, the fact that hotels being part of a chain, it's difficult for them to appeal to certain individual characters. But thinking on the hotels with the most number of followers on Instagram, the number one I think it's independent. It's a Mexican hotel, and the second one I think is in Crete, and it's also independent. I don't know how they've achieved it, but they have millions of followers in Instagram.
Well, and probably because they don't have to follow a lot of rules and guidelines, so they can really get creative and do, you know, some of the things like, for example, the big brands here, hotels are not allowed to be on TikTok. What's the fastest growing social site? TikTok. Now, I understand why they don't want these hotels to do it because there's nothing worse than an abandoned account, and you have to spend a lot of time understanding the atmosphere and ecosphere of TikTok before you can create something good. But it's just a weird dynamic because it's really hard to scale and separate yourself if you're one of 30 exactly like you. I don't know. Sorry to beat a dead horse, but anyway.
No, because that leads to the next question that I have for you, which is that number you gave. 70% of hotels are part of a big brand, so it must be very difficult for them, as I was saying, to stay out of the crowd, you know, and say, well, this is us, because as you're saying, there's another 30 hotels in the same location, very, very similar brand, similar price range. So I mean, what can be done to present themselves their unique selling points, to show it to the audience, to highlight as opposed to the rest?
Listen, if I had a great answer to that, it would be for sale. And I would just give you the web address of where you could purchase it. You know, brands are great for frequent travelers because then they know what to expect. But frequent travelers aren't the only people who stay in hotels. And if we've learned nothing from this pandemic, it's that business travel is changing, maybe forever.
Mhm.
And the old being on the road every Monday through Thursday may not continue to be the thing, right? If every hotel in a chain has the same carpet, the same meeting room, same breakfast buffet, what even is there to talk about? I don't know. I've heard some suggestions. I asked this question of Calvin Tillicky in episode 3 of my podcast, Top Floor, same exact question. And he had a really good answer. I think he said that you should focus on the people in the hotel and tell the stories of the people in those hotels, because that's what separates you. And I think he's absolutely right about that. I'll also say that I mean, trends in hospitality take forever to play out, right? But in the US, I'm not sure what it's like in Europe or other countries abroad, but in the US, the soft brands are taking over. I think that's really good for guests because they can get the best of both worlds in terms of they get a unique hotel with its own story, and there's a different color carpet or whatever, but they also get a loyalty program and some good infrastructure, good support standards, etc. How are our soft brands playing out where you live?
I think it's similar because at the end of the day, those brands, most of those brands are American and they are spreading across the world. But there are all these affiliated programs from hotels. So they have the brand, but not really on the main gate. So they sell through those. So those companies could be the Hyatt one, or in Europe will be, for example, Melia Hotels. They also have these affiliated by Melia or by Hyatt. It's kind of a last name, but it's not a brand as such. Yeah, you're right, because the loyal customers still get the points miles from the loyalty program, but the hotel is more unique in that sense. It can be
And more
sort of
interesting,
independent feeling, which is yeah. Otherwise, like a cookie cutting machine, and I think most customers are tired of that.
I think so too. So it'll be interesting to watch when you and I are like in our 80s and walking with a cane and stuff, if it swings back around again and people want the cookie cutter. Because I mean, that was very appealing and popular in the 80s and 90s when it felt really comfortable to be, oh, okay, I know what I can expect here. I know what is going to happen. So I wonder if it, like, now we're like, we don't want all this boring stuff. We want something cool. And then our grandchildren are like, no, thank you. We would just like some beige carpet and the same croissant to be available at every breakfast. Thank you.
Thing is, I mean, if you take the analogy to restaurants, McDonald's or Burger King, they are the same everywhere you go in the world. And now, so similar with hotels, that you have new brands, and you have the Shake Shack, for example. So it was independent. I don't know, like 50 years ago, it was unique, or Five Guys, but now they are all over the place, and they're all the same everywhere you go. So it's like the independent burger joint is basically another massive brand. So it's not independent anymore. Oh, yeah, that's a good point there. True. Another point I want to touch with you. You also do revenue consulting, Hive Marketing, and I mean, revenue has been there forever, for many, many years. What about total revenue? What about the different outlets, restaurant, bar, spa? Are they really embracing total revenue?
Well, first of all, restaurants have been doing revenue management, I think, longer than hotels have, because they've had to figure out how to Tetris together how many 8 tops can they fit for each seating, and how many 2 tops, and do I allow this table of 2 to sit at a table that's for 8 people? What if 8 people comes in? That's revenue management. But this answer is going to be a little bit roundabout, like all of my answers are. And that is that I don't think any hotel measures the right things. And I think the reason for that, I should say any hotel in the United States measures the right things. And the reason for that is that the stakeholders are each optimizing for a different set of key performance indicators, KPIs, or a different incentive plan. So I'm going to try to explain this, but stop me if it sounds too confusing. The idea for this comes from a really good place. For example, salespeople, group sales manager shouldn't be held responsible for the total profitability of the overall hotel, because she can't impact that. She doesn't control the schedule, labor expenses, how much toilet paper that we order, whatever. So why is she held responsible for profit? She can impact top line. So her incentive is based on top line. But then as it plays out, everyone in the hotel is incentivized on something different. And so their behavior drives to something different. So the best and the freaking most annoying example that I can think of is when a piece of group business is inquiring at your hotel and they're like, hey, thanks, we want 60 rooms a night for 3 nights. We're going to have a general session, breakouts, continental breakfast, AM, PM, and lunch every day. And then we want one dinner at your hotel's signature restaurant. And instead of saying, fantastic, let me take care of that for you, the salesperson says, well, if you want to eat at the signature restaurant, you have to go talk to this person, because the restaurant revenue is not part of my goal. And so I'm not going to fool with that. I'm going to make it as hard on you, customer, as I possibly can, because my incentive plan is not set up to do anything but book business into the meeting space. I mean, so then this poor, well, they get the revenue, so they're not poor, but this restaurant manager is not like a salesperson sitting at her desk at email all day. They're freaking out because like this unexpected 12 top is walking in right now. And then you're yelling at me for not responding to emails within an hour. The only person that loses is the guest. What is the point of this?
Yeah.
So to me, total revenue management should really be called one incentive plan for everybody. If the hotel doesn't hit both top line and profit goals, nobody gets a bonus. The end. What do you think that would do?
Enemies there in the sales department.
Say it again.
You're gonna get loads of enemies there within sales department, with that statement.
Well, and I'm working on something around this, because I used to really think that sales and operations the tension was there on purpose. Because if sales won all the time, you would make no profit. If operations won all the time, you would have a crappy RevPAR index. You would have no top line, right? Because that group isn't perfect, so we don't want them in the hotel or whatever. What if they were both incentivized on the same thing? They would have to work together and figure it out. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah,
and understand.
No, absolutely. They should be. And the thing is, I agree with you. It's unusual what you're saying, but you're absolutely right. Because sometimes you have people, managers in hotels, incentivized mainly on profit, but other ones might be incentivized on either loyalty members enrolled or guest experience scores. So
exactly, or all kinds of things, and all those things are important. But if I say I'm a director of revenue, if I'm incented on top line revenue, it's not hard to make that happen, but I drop the rate so low that there's no profit. So then what does the owner do? Take top line to the bank? No, you can only take profit to the bank. So anyway, that's my long-winded rant on that.
Thank you very much for the answer. Another hot topic there, technology, which I've been discussing a lot with the pandemic, with the increase on the use of technology, digitalization of hotels. It's finally happening. But sometimes, can it be too much technology? Can technology hinder the personal relation with customers?
I would really love to see our industry focus less on guest-facing technology, like a robot concierge or a check-in kiosk or whatever, like the guest interactive technology. And I would like to see the industry focus more on behind the scenes tech that really enables data collection, gets rid of human error, makes things easier and faster and more interesting, like gets rid of the dumb stuff so that the people can do the fun and interesting things. It will never cease to amaze me that we have hotel companies that are still using technology they developed in the 1960s and then rolling out a pancake robot that makes and flips pancakes automatically with no human intervention. What in the world? The priorities are backwards. What do you think?
Again, very unusual thought, but again, I agree with you. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, one of the first interviews I had in the podcast was with the cluster financial manager, and he was poor guy. He was like, "There is so much technology in the wrong direction, and for finance, there is nothing. You know, we still have to do loads of manual accounting because there is no software that aligns different departments and different hotels. It's a pain. You know, it's like I will give anything to have advanced software in the finance side, for example."
It's crazy. Well, I had this conversation with a woman named Ira Vogt. She wrote a book called Hospitality 2.0, which I highly recommend. It's a great book. And we were talking about the idea that maybe, just maybe, hotel companies should get out of the technology building business and leave that to tech companies. So there are tons and tons and tons of tech companies that are building good things for hospitality, but I still feel like the big brands, again, at least in the US, are suspicious of them. I may be wrong about that. That may be an outdated opinion on my part, but it's pretty weird. I'd rather have a PMS that works than a pancake robot.
It makes sense. But it leads a bit with hotels and marketing, and hotels complaining, for example, on the power that OTAs or Airbnb have online in terms of marketing. Well, that's all they do. They're masters of that. They don't have any issue with a plumbing or guest complaining. It's not their business. Their business is marketing.
That's why. And tech, exactly, 100%.
Mm-hmm. So one point you mentioned earlier about having the KPIs aligned. So sales, marketing, revenue. Again, during the pandemic, a lot of discussion about the breaking the silos and getting those departments together. Is it really true? Are they really getting closer and closer, or is it just out of necessity?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's fascinating, and I'm really glad that people continue to have the conversation. So there is a position, and I first heard of this from my friend Bill Yetman, who used to run a hotel sales training company and now has a very fancy job that I don't even think pronounce, but I want to make sure I give him credit for it. So he wrote this article about how directors of sales in hotels were giving up internal market share, meaning power within the hotel business, to revenue. And his theory was that these directors of sales or directors of sales and marketing didn't want to learn the tech. And so they were abdicating everything to directors of revenue. So now directors of revenue are considered the technology experts on property. And what that seems to be doing is leading people to believe that directors of revenue strategy are marketers. And I do not necessarily think that that is true. So there is, I think, a difference between being able to, for example, place an Expedia travel ad because you know how their system works, and having the creative strategy to lay out a campaign that goes on for months and months and months and months. I don't know if that's answering your question, but those are just a handful of my thoughts. Again, I have to go back to the idea that if everyone had the same exact goals, I don't think you would see this much friction between the different disciplines, because everyone would have to rely on each other to get their goals.
Yeah, or otherwise, like I discussing there with Calvin Tiloki the other day, I had a conversation with him as well on, okay, if the main profile within those three roles is revenue, because you might don't have a sales or marketing manager because of the pandemic, whatever, hire an external consultant to help you on that, because you might not necessarily need to expect a revenue manager being a top sales manager, top marketing manager, but that person can get the right advice here and there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, then there's sort of the other piece of it, which is there is a school of thought, which I'm not sure if I agree with or not. I don't think I understand or know enough about it yet, but that AI and machine learning can replace about 80% of what current directors of revenue do. So then what do? If you can create a more accurate forecast through machine learning, then why do you need a person spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours doing a forecast? I don't know. I truly don't know.
Theoretically, the answer is strategize. With all these new revenue RMS that they can run an autopilot basically. The idea is like, if you don't have to spend any time creating your crazy Excels or forecasting because it's done by the machine, then with all due respect, you have to do it's strategize. So consider the strategy. Now,
but
you need
that
full time doing that.
Or maybe they could do multiple hotels. There are so many directors of revenue who don't believe that their RMSs are correct, that they go and continue to do the same calculations and the same manual processes because they don't, quote, trust the RMS. I don't know how to solve for that, because I do know that the technology that they're working with is often based on the on-premise, not frequently updated. So maybe it is wrong, or maybe they're trying to save their jobs. I have no idea.
We'll ask them next time. Last topic I want to touch with you is about talent. So great resignation, especially in the US, but also affecting lots of different countries. Millions of people live in the industry. What can be done? Are they coming back? What's the solution to that?
Again, you're asking me questions that if I knew the real answers would make me real rich. So I'll do my best. I'll try. I have two answers. One's a short one and one's a long one. So what can be done to change the people leaving the industry? Pay them more money.
And then need to increase the rates then?
I mean, we can. Other real estate investments have year-long leases, 5-year leases. We have a 24-hour lease. So that's definitely an option. So pay them more is the short answer. Here's the longer answer. I gave a lot of thought to this, and I'm still not sure I have it articulated really well. So please ask follow-up questions if this doesn't make sense. But it's something around stop putting the idea that you have to have a servant's heart or the passion to serve people on a pedestal. I mean, I have a little secret for you. I love the hospitality business. I loved working in restaurants, which I did for many years before hotels. I loved working for hotels. I was very successful. I don't have anything remotely approaching the heart of a servant or the burning desire to serve people. It's a business. I love the business. And you can start in this industry and learn learn something new every single day for the rest of your life. But you do not have to be subservient, and you do not have to be a martyr and let people walk all over you. And when I hear people talk about the servant's heart, or like, I just have a passion to serve people, maybe you do, but everyone does not.
No, true. The thing is, not every hospitality role is customer facing. So I understand a lot of people, they cannot stand anymore serving customers like face to face, but there's lots of different roles at the back office. And still, also those roles are living. So it's not only I can't serve people anymore. It's a combination of different reasons. Salary is one of them, absolutely. Yeah. But that's one of the things that come to my mind is, okay, if you increase the salaries, will you need to increase rates? So will every hotel now be viable? Because if you have a sort of average hotel, 3-star, $80, let's say, or $100 rate, if you increase the wages, then your rates, 30% increase in rates, will you still be attractive? Mm-hmm.
I have two more ideas to bring to this conversation. Neither of them originated with me. They're both from friends. And the first is from Mary Beth Cutchell, who is a very famous development person here in the United States. And she was quoted in an article as saying, Hotels are under demolished. There are too many left standing, too many old, raggedy buildings. She didn't say that part. I said that part. So I think that's one thing to think about. And then something else, and I think I actually read this today. My friend Tammy Gillis, whose company is Gillis Sales, they do outsourced sales for hotels. And she asked this question: how can we expect students to spend $80,000 on hospitality degrees and start them at $15 an hour? They can't pay back an $80,000 education at $15 an hour. It's impossible. So why would they join our business?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Makes sense.
You didn't think I was going to be this controversial, did you?
No. It's like, that wasn't unexpected. Huh? I mean, the only answer that wasn't. So my last question, and is the one, and also I tend to ask the same question to every guest, first and last. So first about the career, and last one about advice for young people, which sort of you answered already. So how to attract young talent into the industry? Salary is not an attractive one, no. So what would you tell that 19-year-old guy, girl who is thinking now and maybe studying hospitality or joining the industry?
I mean, you've probably had every single guest say the same thing, which is if somebody is asking me if they should be in the hospitality industry, the answer is absolutely yes. There is no business in the world where you can start at the very, very, very bottom and end up at the very top. So that in and of itself is a very good reason. It's also extremely fun and a huge amount of learning. But the advice I would give, and this is advice I would give my younger self, is to be loyal to yourself and your values. You do not owe your loyalty to anyone else, and especially not a company.
Okay, that's a very nice advice. First time I hear something like that. So no, I mean, you say like most people say, yeah, do join it. It's true. Most of the people I speak with are passionate about the industry, and that's why they stay there, or they've been there for 20, 30 years.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, obviously salaries are not the most attractive part of it, but there are other reasons, the passion, the fact that nowadays the same as the previous one. And as you were saying, the fact that you can start at $15 an hour and then after a few years be managing a company. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Good. These were all the questions that I have for you. So thank you very much for making it conversational. I appreciate it. That was very nice.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me. This was really fun. I hope I didn't make your listeners want to press stop by yelling at them with my rants.
Probably that I go back and forth as I listen to the questions again and again. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay. I didn't expect that answer. So I really love your answers because it makes you think. So it's great.
Excellent.
Good.
Well, thank you.
Again, Susan, thanks for your time.
That was all for now. Hope you found it useful. Remember that you have more information on our website www.torresconsulting.co.uk, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter. Stay well. Goodbye for now.